Packed my bags and left when my boyfriend enforced a curfew, claiming it was his standard for relationships. I've been with my boyfriend for over 5 years now, and we've lived together for a year and a half. The other night, as I was getting ready to head to a Halloween potluck with some of my girlfriends and their boyfriends, he suddenly started talking to me about having a curfew. He told me that no woman should be out late because nothing good happens late into the night, and made it clear that he didn't want me out until 3 a.m. I tried to explain that I wasn't even planning to stay out that late. Honestly, I just wanted a fun night with friends. But the mere idea that he thought it was appropriate to set a curfew for me made me extremely uncomfortable. He doubled down and said that unless he was physically there with me, I, as a woman, shouldn't be out of the house late at night, especially at a party. That's when I told him he didn't need to be so controlling and that I was honestly confused. He'd never done anything like this before. I go to social events pretty regularly, but it's rare I go to parties like this, maybe once every few months. Plus, I'd invited him, twice, to come to this party with me, but he declined. When I asked why he felt so strongly about this all of a sudden, he just looked at me and said, "I have standards. These are my standards. If you don't like them, you don't have to live with me anymore. I'm not budging on this." Then, as if that wasn't harsh enough, he added, "Now I expect you home at 1 a.m. because you're pissing me off, but I should be saying 11 p.m. His words freaked me out. It felt like I was standing in front of a stranger, not my boyfriend of 5 years. I packed a bag, left in tears, and went to my parents' house. I haven't been back since. It's been over 72 hours now. He hasn't called, hasn't texted, hasn't checked in at all. Part of me keeps hoping he'll reach out and start a conversation, but it's starting to feel like he has absolutely no shame for how he treated me, and that he genuinely believes I'm the one in the wrong. I love the relationship we've built over the years, which is why this whole incident is so shocking to me. I've never seen this side of him. I was in tears when I left, confused, hurt, and honestly scared about what this means for us. I can't stop thinking about how he so bluntly told me if I didn't like his standards, I didn't have to live with him. That, and the fact that he hasn't even tried to reach out to talk, is making me question everything. I keep replaying that night in my head. He'd never tried to control my social life before. I go out with friends all the time, and parties are a rare thing for me, not even every few months sometimes. And I always invite him. He could have come with me, I wanted him there, but instead, he chose to draw a line in the sand and call it standards, acting like this was some principle he'd always had. Despite everything we've shared and worked through, his reaction floored me. I don't know where we go from here, but I can't ignore how strongly my gut is telling me that something isn't right. It feels like a huge red flag. I just want to understand what I should do, for myself, and for what's left of the relationship I thought I had. Update 1. The argument that started it all happened on a Saturday late afternoon. For days afterward, I heard nothing from boyfriend. By Wednesday, I decided it was time to move out. I rented a small U-Haul for the upcoming Saturday, which was the earliest my family could help. Still, silence from him. My family and I agreed it was best not to warn boyfriend that I was coming for my things until the last minute. We were genuinely worried he might destroy my belongings. He was always an extreme minimalist. Every item of furniture, all the decor, the tools, everything in that house was mine, bought with my own money. I had thousands of dollars worth of possessions there, not to mention priceless mementos. Saturday finally arrived. I texted boyfriend that morning, letting him know that my parents were coming to remove my stuff and asked him to please be out of the house while they did it. His message back was curt, "No, stop telling me what to do." So he knew when we'd be there. For my own safety, I stayed home. When my parents arrived, my mother knocked and rang the doorbell. No answer. I told her to check the garage for boyfriend's car. The garage door opened and there, thrown across the garage floor, were my things, scattered everywhere. My family began hauling what they could into the truck. But boyfriend's car was still there. He was inside. A few minutes later, he emerged. My mother would later say that he looked almost psychotic. He's never done drugs or been drunk, but in that moment, he seemed completely not himself. And he made a point to show my family that he was carrying a gun in the pocket of his sweatpants. He told them to get off his property. My mom tried to be calm, asking if he was all right. After all, we'd all known each other for years. He replied, "I'm fine, why wouldn't I be?" My mom pleaded with him, asking if she could come inside to retrieve some of my essentials, my medication, glasses, contacts, work badge, even my underwear. It had been a week since I'd had any of it. At first, he refused, but then, reluctantly, he agreed. My mother stepped inside and immediately saw an AR-57 set up in the kitchen, ready to use. She turned right around, got everyone into the car, and left. I spent the next few hours calling around, trying to arrange for a police escort to get the rest of my things. In hindsight, this should have been our first move. Meanwhile, my mom contacted the homeowners, boyfriend's parents, who lived a couple hours away, and told them everything. They were distraught. They said they were coming immediately. That evening, his parents called to say they'd taken boyfriend out of the house and were monitoring him at their place. Only then did we return and clear out the rest of my belongings. The next day, I got a text from boyfriend. He claimed he didn't realize I was breaking up with him, that he was waiting for me to reach out while he reflected on everything. I told him what he did, threatening my family with a gun, was something I couldn't forgive. He said he wanted to talk, but I told him I wasn't ready for that. I finished with a message telling him to work on himself, and that if I ever wanted to talk, I'd reach out. His reply was a string of okays and, bizarrely, just don't fuck your ex. Hate that guy. Heard really bad things about him. He was joking about himself, he's the only boyfriend I've ever had. It chilled me, getting a joking text like that after he just scared my family with guns. He also sent an apology text to my mother. This felt more like something drafted for liability, likely at his lawyer mother's direction. Highlights included, I know you felt threatened by what you saw. And there is no excuse for having guns out while people are present at my house. Seeing a gun, concealed or otherwise, in that sort of situation is enough to shock someone, especially those unfamiliar with these weapons. He finished with, my parents agree and have asked me to give my guns up until I am more responsible and careful. The next day, he texted me again, I know I've acted nonchalant about things, and it's not a good habit. I can't continue to live in limbo. I hope you will come over and talk to me in person. False hope is not doing me any good. I need to move on with my life. I replied honestly, I do not want to give you false hope, but I'm not in a place of forgiveness. I think it's time that we continue to move on with our separate lives. That's when he said, listen, come talk to me. I feel awful that I used your own love for me as a lever against you. I hate the person who did that to you, and every day I try to bury that part of me. So much to take in. We exchanged a few more texts, and, naively, I agreed to a conversation in person. Not at the house. In public. In daylight. At the time, I was reeling and desperate for some kind of closure. After years together, I wanted to understand how he could turn into someone so frightening. We set a tentative plan for Thursday. He said he wasn't sure if he'd be available but would confirm. I didn't hear back until 8:15 p.m. on Thursday, when he texted, you still coming or no? We hadn't even picked a location. It was dark. I suggested we meet the next morning. His response, 8:30 is late for you now? Then, I said your curfew was 1 a.m., so you're good, and, just get your ass over here and talk, I am not going this 9 a.m. bullshit. Or I will put a scorpion in your bed. I replied, and he wrote, I'm OMW. I panicked. I was at a new, safe place, location A. My mom was across town at location B, and my dad at location C. I had to alert everyone, as boyfriend knew all these addresses. Sure enough, he showed up at location C, where my dad was. My dad later confessed he was scared for his safety, for his house. Thankfully, nothing happened. Boyfriend waited outside, texted me here, then left. But that night, I barely slept. I was afraid he'd show up at my mother's place, or mine. I ignored his next texts. He started calling. He left a disturbingly calm voicemail, wondering when I'd be ready to talk. He said if I wanted to have that conversation, I, F23, am, welcome to the house whenever. I'd had enough. I texted him back, threatening to file for a restraining order if he contacted me again. A month later, out of the blue, he messaged, hey, obviously what happened. I'm sorry I made you feel unsafe. That's not who I am as a person or who I would want to be. I wish you the best in whatever you do. That was the last I ever heard from him. Looking back, I know things could have gone much, much worse. I am so grateful my family and I are okay. I'm so relieved I got out when I did. Yes, I could have done some things differently. I learned a lot about myself from this experience. I chose a careful, non-confrontational approach for my safety. Boyfriend knows where my loved ones live, and, in a small community like ours, I had to be cautious. I truly believe this man is capable of causing harm if angered. All of us live within a few miles of each other. He could find anyone. Some details have been condensed for brevity, but this is the reality I lived through. I'm just grateful it's behind me. Update 2. It's been about 8 months since my last update, and I honestly thought I'd never have to write about this situation again. I was wrong. For the most part, life has been incredibly peaceful. I moved to a new apartment across town, started therapy, and slowly began rebuilding my sense of safety. I'd see his car occasionally around town. It's a small community, after all, but we never crossed paths directly. I was finally sleeping through the night again. Then, 3 weeks ago, everything changed. I was at the grocery store on a Sunday afternoon when I ran into Sarah, a mutual friend from our old social circle. We'd lost touch after the breakup, which honestly felt necessary at the time. She seemed genuinely happy to see me, and we chatted for a few minutes about normal things, work, the weather, mutual friends. But then her expression shifted. I probably shouldn't tell you this, she said, glancing around nervously, but I think you should know. He's been telling people a very different version of what happened between you two. My stomach dropped. I asked her what she meant. According to Sarah, my ex has been telling people that I cheated on him. Not just that, he's been saying I had an ongoing affair with a coworker, and that when he confronted me about it, I went crazy and made up stories about him threatening me. He's apparently been very convincing, painting himself as the heartbroken victim who tried to work things out with his unfaithful girlfriend. The worst part? Some people believe him. Sarah said she'd heard variations of this story from at least 3 different people over the past few months. Each time, the details got more elaborate. In one version, I supposedly brought the other man to our house. In another, I'd been planning to leave him for months and was just looking for an excuse. I felt sick. After everything I'd been through, the fear, the therapy, the slow process of healing, he was still finding ways to hurt me, and he was doing it by destroying my reputation in our small community. Sarah assured me she never believed any of it, especially after seeing how shaken I'd been in the weeks following our breakup. But she wanted me to know what was circulating, in case it affected my work or other relationships. I spent the next few days in a fog. My therapist helped me work through the anger and hurt, reminding me that his need to rewrite history said everything about his character and nothing about mine. The people who truly knew me would never believe such stories. But then, last Tuesday, something happened that made me realize this wasn't just about gossip. I was leaving work around 6 p.m. when I noticed a familiar car in the parking lot. Not his car, I would have recognized it immediately. This was a dark sedan I'd seen a few times over the past week in different locations. At the coffee shop near my apartment. Outside the gym I'd started going to. At first, I thought it was just coincidence, but seeing it at my workplace felt different. I pretended not to notice and walked to my car normally, but I was shaking. Once inside, I sat for a moment, trying to decide what to do. The sedan was parked about 4 spaces away, and I could see a figure in the driver's seat, though I couldn't make out who it was. I decided to test my theory. Instead of driving straight home, I took a completely different route, one that would normally take me to the other side of town. Sure enough, the sedan followed, staying about 2 cars behind. My heart was pounding. I drove to the police station. The sedan immediately turned off onto a side street and disappeared. I sat in the police station parking lot for 20 minutes, trying to calm down and figure out what to do. I hadn't gotten a clear look at the driver, and I couldn't prove it was connected to my ex. But the timing felt too convenient, especially with Sarah's revelation about the stories he'd been spreading. I decided to go inside and speak with an officer. I explained the situation, the previous incidents, the recent rumors, and now what appeared to be surveillance. The officer was sympathetic but honest about the limitations. Without proof of direct contact or explicit threats, there wasn't much they could do. However, he did create an incident report and advised me to document everything, times, locations, license plates if possible. He also suggested I might want to consider a restraining order, given the history. I've been thinking about the conversation all week. Part of me wonders if I'm being paranoid, if the stress of hearing about his lies has made me imagine threats that aren't really there. But my gut tells me something isn't right. The man I thought I knew for 5 years turned out to be capable of things I never imagined. What else might he be capable of? I haven't seen the sedan since that night, but I've been more careful about my routines. I vary my routes home from work. I've asked my neighbors to keep an eye out for anything unusual. I've even started parking in different spots at my apartment complex. Yesterday, I made a decision. I'm going to file for a restraining order. My therapist thinks it's a good idea, and honestly, I need the peace of mind. Even if he's not the one following me, the pattern of behavior, the lies, the potential surveillance, suggests he's not ready to let this go. I'm scared about what this might escalate to, but I'm also proud of myself for recognizing the signs and taking action. 8 months ago, I was naive about what someone could be capable of. I'm not naive anymore. The hearing is scheduled for next week. I've gathered all the documentation I can. Screenshots of his texts, photos of the gun incident, witness, statements from my parents about that day. I'm hoping it will be enough. I'll update again after the hearing, assuming there's something to report. I'm trying to stay optimistic that this will finally put an end to this chapter of my life. But if this experience has taught me anything, it's that you can never really know someone completely, and sometimes the people we trust most are the ones capable of causing the most harm. For now, I'm just focusing on staying safe and moving forward. I refuse to let his need for control define my life any longer. Update 3. It's been 2 months since my last update, and I wish I could say things have gotten simpler. The restraining order hearing went better than expected. The judge granted a temporary order that's valid for 6 months. Having that piece of paper should have made me feel safer, but what happened next turned my world upside down in ways I never saw coming. The first sign something was off came about 3 weeks after the hearing. I was finally starting to feel like myself again, sleeping better, laughing with friends, even going on a few casual dates. Then my coworker Emma approached me during lunch break with a strange expression on her face. "This is probably nothing," she said, "but did you know there's a guy who's been asking about you around town?" My blood went cold. I asked her what she meant, and she explained that her boyfriend Jake had been approached by someone at a bar downtown. The man had claimed to be conducting a character assessment for a potential employer and was asking detailed questions about my work ethic, my personal life, whether I'd ever seemed unstable or prone to lying. Jake thought it was weird enough to mention it to Emma, especially since the guy seemed to know a lot about me already, where I worked, what I drove, even that I'd recently moved apartments. The description Emma gave me didn't match my ex, but that didn't make me feel any better. I reported it to the police, adding it to my growing file of incidents. Officer Martinez, who'd been handling my case, suggested I might want to consider that my ex could be using intermediaries to gather information without violating the restraining order directly. The thought made my skin crawl, but then, just when I thought I had a handle on the situation, everything shifted in a direction I never expected. Last month, I started getting close to someone new. David works in IT at a company that contracts with my office. We'd been chatting casually for weeks before he finally asked me out. He was patient about my hesitation to date, understanding when I explained I was dealing with a difficult ex situation without going into all the details. Our third date was last Friday. We'd gone to dinner at a new place across town, somewhere I'd never been before. The conversation was easy, natural. For the first time in months, I felt genuinely relaxed with someone. David walked me to my car around 9 p.m., and we were saying goodnight when I noticed a familiar figure across the street. It wasn't my ex. It was Marcus, his best friend from college who'd always made me uncomfortable. Marcus had been in our friend group for years, but something about him had always felt off. He was the type who made inappropriate comments and then claimed he was just joking when called out. I hadn't seen Marcus since before the breakup, but there he was, standing under a streetlight, clearly watching us. When he saw me notice him, he didn't look away or pretend he was doing something else. He just stared. David asked if I was okay, and I made some excuse about recognizing someone from work. The next morning, I woke up to a Facebook message from an account I didn't recognize. No profile picture, generic name, John Smith. The message was short: saw you out last night. Looked like you were having fun. Hope David knows what he's getting into. My hands were shaking as I screenshotted it and immediately blocked the account. But 20 minutes later, another message came from a different fake account. You can block me all you want, but I know where you live, where you work, who you're spending time with. This isn't over. I called the police immediately. Officer Martinez took the report seriously, especially given the connection to Marcus and the restraining order. But again, without concrete proof that my ex was behind it, their options were limited. Then, on Wednesday, something happened that changed everything. I was at Target after work, picking up some basics, when I literally bumped into someone turning the corner in the pharmacy aisle. It was Marcus. Up close, in broad daylight, with nowhere to run. Hey stranger, he said, like we were old friends catching up. How've you been? I told him I was fine and tried to walk away, but he kept talking. You know, it's funny running into you here. I was just thinking about how much drama you caused in our friend group. Really split people up. I stopped walking. What are you talking about? He smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. Come on, we all know what really happened. You cheated, got caught, and then made up some crazy story about guns and threats when he confronted you about it. Pretty elaborate way to cover your tracks. The audacity stunned me. That's not what happened, and you know it. Do I? He stepped closer. Because I've heard some interesting things about your new boyfriend. David, right? Seems like a nice guy. Would be a shame if he found out about your history. That's when I realized what was happening. This wasn't just harassment, it was a coordinated campaign to isolate me and destroy any chance I had of moving forward. My ex couldn't contact me directly because of the restraining order, so he was using Marcus as a proxy. I looked Marcus straight in the eye and said, if you or anyone else contacts me, David, or anyone in my life again, I'm going straight to the police. I have a restraining order, and I'm not afraid to use it. His expression shifted, and for a moment, I saw something cold and calculating that reminded me of that horrible night at the house. Restraining orders are just pieces of paper, he said quietly. They don't actually protect you from anything. I walked away without another word, but I was terrified. As soon as I got to my car, I called David and told him everything. The whole story, the breakup, the guns, the stalking, the restraining order, everything I'd been afraid to share because I didn't want to scare him away. His response surprised me. Instead of running, he got angry on my behalf. This is insane, he said. You shouldn't have to deal with this alone. That night, David insisted on staying at my apartment. Around 2 a.m., we were woken up by someone trying my door handle. David immediately called 911 while I peeked through the blinds. I couldn't see anyone, but David's car had been keyed, deep scratches spelling out cheater across the driver's side. The police came, took a report, and increased patrols in my area. But the message was clear, the restraining order wasn't stopping anything. Yesterday, I made a decision that scared me but felt necessary. I'm moving out of state. I found a job opportunity in Colorado that I'd been considering anyway, and David has been offered a remote position that would let him come with me, if he wants to. I hate that it's come to this. I hate that I'm letting them win by running away. But I've learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit when you're in over your head and need to start fresh somewhere else. We're leaving in 3 weeks. I haven't told anyone except my parents and my therapist. I'm hoping that distance will finally give me the peace I've been searching for. I'll update once more after we're settled, assuming there's anything to report. For now, I'm just focused on getting through these next few weeks safely and starting the next chapter of my life somewhere far away from all of this. Update 4. It's been 4 months since David and I moved to Colorado, and I genuinely thought I was writing the final chapter of this nightmare. Colorado was supposed to be our fresh start, new state, new jobs, new life. For the first few months, it actually felt like we'd succeeded. I was sleeping through the night again, David and I were growing closer, and I hadn't seen or heard anything related to my ex or Marcus. I was finally starting to believe I was truly free. Then, 2 weeks ago, everything came crashing down in a way I never could have anticipated. I was at my new job, a marketing firm in downtown Denver, when I got a call from my mom. She was crying, which immediately put me on edge. My parents had been so supportive through everything, but they'd also been dealing with their own stress about my safety. "Honey, I need to tell you something," she said, her voice shaking. "Your father and we've been getting calls." My stomach dropped. "What kind of calls?" "Someone's been calling our house, our work phones, even your dad's cell. They're claiming to be from different agencies, saying they're investigating you for fraud, that you've been stealing from your employer, that you're involved in some kind of identity theft scheme." I felt like I was going to be sick. "Mom, that's not true. You know that's not true." "Of course we know that," she said quickly. "But honey, they're very convincing. They have details about your new job, your address in Colorado, even information about David. And they're not just calling us, they've contacted your old workplace, some of our neighbors, even your Aunt Linda." The systematic nature of it terrified me. This wasn't random harassment. Someone was methodically trying to destroy my reputation and cause problems for everyone I cared about. But then my mom said something that made my blood run cold. "There's something else. Yesterday, a woman called claiming to be your new coworker. She told me she was concerned about you, that you'd been acting erratically at work and that she thought I should know you'd been seeing someone else. Behind David's back." "What?" I could barely process what she was saying. "She said she'd seen you with another man multiple times, that you'd been lying to David about working late when you were actually meeting this person. She had details, honey. She knew what you were wearing last Tuesday, knew about the restaurant where you and David had dinner last weekend." I was speechless. Not only was someone still stalking me from hundreds of miles away, but now they were creating elaborate lies about infidelity, the same accusation my ex had been spreading back home. That night, I told David everything. His face grew darker with each detail I shared. "This is insane," he said. "We moved across the country, and they're still finding ways to get to you." But then he asked a question that caught me off guard. "Is there any chance someone here could be helping them? Someone who would know those details about our daily routines?" I hadn't even considered that possibility, but it made terrible sense. Someone would need to be physically watching us to know the specific details that had been shared with my parents. The next morning, I decided to test a theory. I told David the first was going to work early, but instead, I parked across the street from our apartment building and waited. Sure enough, about 20 minutes after David left for his job, I saw a woman emerge from the building next to ours. She walked to a car I'd noticed several times in the parking lot but never thought much about. I followed her, carefully, staying far enough back to avoid detection. She drove straight to a coffee shop about 10 minutes away, where she sat at a corner table with a laptop and what looked like a notebook. From my position across the street, I could see her making phone calls and writing things down. I took photos of her car, her license plate, and several shots of her through the coffee shop window. Then I called the Denver Police Department. The officer who met me was skeptical at first, but when I showed him the photos and explained the pattern of harassment that had followed me from another state, he agreed to look into it. He ran the license plate and found that the car was registered to a woman named Jennifer Walsh, a name that meant nothing to me. But when he showed me Jennifer's driver's license photo, I nearly fainted. It was someone I recognized, though I couldn't immediately place from where. That evening, I was going through old photos on my phone, trying to figure out where I'd seen this woman before, when it hit me. She was in a group photo from a work party at my old job, not as an employee, but as someone's guest. I zoomed in on the photo and my heart stopped. She was standing next to Marcus. The pieces started falling into place. Marcus had somehow convinced this woman to move to Colorado and watch me. The level of planning and coordination was beyond anything I'd imagined possible. I called the police again, and this time they took immediate action. Within hours, they had Jennifer in for questioning. According to the officer who called me later, she broke down almost immediately. Jennifer confessed that Marcus had been paying her to monitor me and David. She'd moved to Colorado specifically for this purpose, getting an apartment near ours and establishing a routine of watching our comings and goings. She'd been feeding information back to Marcus, who had been coordinating the harassment campaign against my family. But here's the part that still gives me chills. Jennifer wasn't just some random person Marcus had hired. She was his ex-girlfriend, and she'd been convinced that I was the reason their relationship had ended. Marcus had apparently told her that I'd manipulated my ex into breaking up with him, and that I was some kind of serial manipulator who destroyed relationships. The whole thing was like a house of cards built on lies, with each person involved believing a different version of events that painted me as the villain. Jennifer has been arrested and charged with stalking and harassment. She's apparently cooperating with authorities and has provided evidence of Marcus's involvement, including recordings of their phone conversations and bank records showing payments he'd made to her. The Denver police are now working with law enforcement back home to build a case against Marcus. They've also uncovered evidence that my ex might have been more involved than we initially thought, despite the restraining order. But the most shocking revelation came yesterday. Jennifer told police that Marcus had been planning something bigger, that watching me was just the first phase of a plan to make me pay for what I'd supposedly done to my ex. She didn't know the details, but she said he'd been talking about escalating things and had been asking her to gather information about David's schedule and routines. The police have advised us to consider relocating again, at least temporarily, while they build their case. David's company has agreed to let him work remotely from anywhere, and my boss has been surprisingly understanding about the situation. Tomorrow, we're flying to stay with David's sister in Oregon while the legal proceedings unfold. I feel like I'm living in some kind of twisted thriller movie, except it's my actual life. I keep thinking about how naive I was in the beginning, believing that moving states would be enough to escape this. I never imagined that someone could be so consumed with revenge that they'd orchestrate something this elaborate. The scariest part is wondering what would have happened if I hadn't spotted Jennifer that morning. What was the escalation Marcus had been planning? And how long would this have continued if she hadn't been caught? I'm grateful for the police officers who finally took this seriously, for David's unwavering support, and for the fact that we're all safe. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't terrified about what comes next. The detective handling the case said prosecuting harassment across state lines is complex, but they're confident they have enough evidence to move forward. He also mentioned that my ex's lawyer mother might have inadvertently helped their case by documenting his gun collection and mental state after the original incident. I'll update again once we're settled in Oregon and I know more about the legal proceedings. For now, I'm just trying to process the fact that my quiet life in Colorado was actually an illusion, and that someone was watching my every move for months without me knowing. Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever truly be free of this, or if I'll be looking over my shoulder for the rest of my life. But I'm trying to stay focused on the fact that each time they've escalated, they've also made mistakes that led to getting caught. Maybe this time will finally be the end of it.